All right, good morning, guys. We are going to look at comprehension strategies for secondary students with disabilities. My name is Erica Price. I'm actually the new literacy consultant for CKEC. I just started July 1st, so you guys are one of my guinea pig groups. First things first, mute your audio. Video can be on or off. It's going to depend on your bandwidth, it's your choice. And in the chat box, what do you hope to take away from today's session? Just for 1 minute, somebody, a couple of you type in the chat box what you're hoping to get out of today's session. Strategies, yeah. Resources. Comprehension with engagement, that's big. Anything to help your kids with comprehension. Totally understand. Immediately, that's something we all want, something we can use right now. Thinking outside of the box. That's hard. You can never have enough resources. No, I agree. All right, so let's jump right on in. As I said, my name is Erica Price. I'm the new literacy consultant with CKEC. I have my email on the screen in case anybody needs to get in touch with me. Email's a great way. Just a quick informational. So here's how I've set this session up. We're actually going to focus on different research-based reading strategies. All three of them come from Teaching Exceptional Children, and they all three are to improve comprehension skills for our middle and high school students with disabilities. We're going to look at different ways to implement these strategies in the classroom. We're looking for student success. There will be three, so we'll go through each of them pretty quickly, and then we'll about 15 minutes each, and then at the end we'll have about 15 more minutes for question and answer. The first strategy is called collaborative strategic reading. This strategy was created for high school. It's actually was created for students with autism. I've made a couple changes so it includes a wider array of students, but and I also have the sources listed, so if you want to go back and read the entire article, they will be available. And something for all students here: know me for my abilities, not my disability. Just a quick quote to get us started. The collaborative strategic reading high school obviously goes by initials. It's a lot, it's a mouthful. So that's the CSR-HS. It combines applications of strategy, instruction, and cooperative learning to improve reading comprehension throughout the reading process. It's targeted for students that are reading to learn, not so much the students that are learning to read, but we're looking for those that comprehension piece, the reading to learn, and they are evidence-based strategies. So we've got it set up there. I have it set up with actually two plans. It was designed with one more, that student with SLD in reading. I added a different little piece to it, more of a student with a moderate to severe disability. So we're going to look at both of them. But here's the plan for the student with the reading SLD. When we have the students in class, all of our students are going to work with a peer, regardless of if it's a gen ed student or a special ed student. They're going to work with peers. They are going to have activities at least 3 times a week. The sessions will be about 30 minutes. And if you ever worked with little guys and you did say guided reading, you know you have a time frame. The reason it's 30 minutes is it's quick. We want to move on, but we want to be able to do it repeatedly. The text is given to this group on their instructional reading level, not their independent, but their instructional reading level. And we see the most positive outcome when students, when they complete at least 16 sessions. We will use a learning log in this one, and after students are gaining more independence, we'll start to fade the learning log and we'll fade the partners. So this is the plan, how it's set up before you begin, just as a little notice for students with an SLD in reading. Same type of plan, but it's set up for a student with a moderate to severe disability. So this one, it's the same thing. All the students work with a peer. Instead of just doing it 3 times a week, a student with a moderate to severe disability may need to do it 3 or 4 times a week. It's going to depend upon the student. And the sessions may last a little longer. Instead of just 30, it could be 45. It may not. For this student, the text is given to him or her on their independent reading level. For our SLD, we were looking at instructional reading level. For this one, we're looking at independent. If he or she is a non-reader, then we're going to use maybe a peer to read or technology. The same thing, at least 16 sessions, possibly more, to see the progress needed. And instead of fading the learning log, we're going to continue with the learning log, and we'll also use a graphic organizer more so instead of a specific learning log. Now, when you're looking for content, it obviously needs to be meaningful. The students have to be able to access it. It needs to be an interest area or their choice. And these are older kids we're looking at, so we're also looking at age appropriateness. For this specific strategy, I went ahead and I did choose an article out of Tween Tribune. I don't know if you've used Tween Tribune or not. I love it. It's a fabulous website. I used it with my students. Let me just show it to you really quick. I put the Lexile chart on here simply because Tween Tribune does work with Lexile, different Lexile levels. So with this one, 5 false facts about the human body. If you go to Tween Tribune, you're going to see you can choose different Lexile levels. And that's why I chose this. This is the article that I selected specifically for this strategy. And I'll talk more about it in a minute. Let me get rid of it. There we go. So the first thing you're going to do, if you're using this strategy, is the teacher introduction. Just lasts a couple minutes. You're going to explain to the partners the topic of the lesson. You're going to make sure the partners have everything they need, which would be the graphic organizer or the reading log or whatever, but their reading passage as well. Before they start reading, the students need to know the purpose of the tasks to be completed. So that's something you're going to do. You could do this by modeling, reviewing the title, the headings, pictures, charts, tables, whatever you have in that passage. You're going to introduce 2 to 3 vocabulary words. Not a lot, just a couple. And you're going to activate knowledge using different materials. You could use a picture, a demonstration, a video clip, whatever's needed to activate knowledge for that specific text that we're getting ready to read. When you go to introduce vocabulary words, you can do this in multiple ways. You can do this with just simply the old-fashioned making flashcards. I would suggest that students with more complex needs, when you do introduce the vocabulary words, you do this using a 0-second time delay. So for example, you're going to read the definition, show falseness of a myth, idea, or belief. Then you're going to point to each word and say the word debunk, myth, or indigestible. And you're not going to give them a chance to get it wrong. You're going to immediately point back and say debunk so that they can see show falseness is to debunk it. Students with SLD, they can create their own flashcards, or they can use the learning log and list them out in the learning log, or whatever method you find better. If we're using technology, you could do a quick and simple vocabulary option using, for example, boom cards. So this took me maybe 5 minutes to set up. I don't even know if it took that long. So each of the definitions are listed and then the 3 vocabulary words. If I get it correct, it goes on. If I get it incorrect, it won't let me go on until I get it correct. So that's just a really quick one on boom cards, just another option for vocabulary. Lots of people like Kahoot as well. Kahoot's a quick and easy setup. Boom cards is free, Kahoot is free. If you use boom cards to gather the data on the students as they complete it, you will have to set up an account, and it does cost yearly, but just to use a fast pen like I just showed you, that was free. And Kahoot is free. My students always loved Kahoot. I'm not sure about your guys's. But those are quick, easily accessible ways to work on that vocabulary piece students need before they start with the new text. During reading, we are encouraging students to discuss the text with their partners, the words and phrases. Yes, we're encouraging them to talk, which can be chaotic, I know, I understand, but it really helps with those unknown words and phrases. Their peer partners may explain any misunderstood information. They can help highlight vocabulary words. They can discuss definitions, words. They can review context clues. They can do all of these things together during the reading process. At some point during this process, though, the teacher's going to pause, and each of the partner will come up with a true-false question, and they will ask each other. So they're going to ask these questions of each other amongst just the the pair, and it's a quickie stop comprehension check. Partner one's going to ask the true-false question of partner 2, and then partner 2 will ask it of 1. So both are participating in this questioning technique to help with, again, the comprehension. When you're thinking of your text, you need to think of reading options. It needs to be accessible. We have the one I showed you, an example of Tween Tribune. If you set up an account on here, you can also have quizzes set up and take data through quizzes. You can change your Lexile level to make it for different students depending on ability. If it's a student with more significant needs, you may want to set up a story map, and you can give the pictures and then the information. That way they have additional pictures to work on that comprehension piece. To access it, they may just read with a partner. Or if one is available, they may watch a video clip. If we go back to Tween Tribune, you're going to notice that this article also comes with a 1-minute, 30-second video clip. So that's quick and easy. If you have the technology, most kids have phones, they can get the information that way. After reading, now after the students have completed the text, they're going to discuss and ask questions. They're going to summarize what they read. The summary can be through this learning log, and I have an example on here we'll get to. You're going to check for understanding those WH questions. Remember How and why are harder WH questions though, so you may want to wait till we're doing more independently. Everything may not be so teacher-led before you introduce those questions. You can use graphic organizers. These graphic organizers will help in identifying the main idea of the text and 3 key details, which will then in turn help with summaries. And then, of course, there's the teacher wrap-up, where the teacher's going to restate the purpose of the reading, discuss student accomplishments, and provide feedback on the student performance. This is just an example of, instead of a learning log, it would be a response board for students with more complex needs. You have these important WH questions on here, the title, the basic information, but then you're asking, who did what? Well, the students can mark scientists. What'd they do? They debunked. How? They debunked myths using science. And those 3 answers also provide a summary. Scientists debunked myths using science. So this would be an option for students with more difficult, more complex needs. This would be a simple option for a student with an SLD. This could be a learning log. The student would have this out at the beginning. They're going to log the main idea of what it's about, and they can discuss this with their partner as they're gaining their independence. The log's going to help them with the main idea, the 3 supporting details, and then they would be able to take the basic information from each and complete a summary, not a long summary. 2 sentences, 3 sentences. It doesn't have to be in great length. We're working on comprehension. And there could even be a spot for vocabulary words. All right, so that in a nutshell is the first article, Reading Comprehension Strategies for High School Students with Autism Spectrum Disorder. That's what I told you. It was geared mostly for students with autism, but it's an easy fix for other students. This is the information. If you want to read the entire article, here's where I found it. It came from Teaching Exceptional Children, and this is the issue. All right, so how's everybody doing so far? In the chat box. Keep going. We're good. Great, good, great. So far, so good. All right. Anything needed? That's a real simple strategy, but it works really well in the classroom when given the time needed. Now, you can't go in and try it 2 or 3 times and then say, well, it's not working. You have to give it the ample time. Am I willing to share this PowerPoint? Yes, ma'am, I am. I will share anything I have. So let's go on, since everybody's doing okay, and look at the next article. Now, again, remember, the 3 strategies we're looking at are articles. All 3 came from Teaching Exceptional Children. I'm not sure if you subscribe to that or not. I have it. I've had it for years, and I love it. I keep it. Okay? So this one the article is called Supporting Students with Emotional and Behavior Disorders. Disorders is comprehension and reading fluency. Sorry, I was about to skip that. That's what this article is. So let's jump in. First things first, what's one thing that you know about this topic? In the chat box. 1 minute. A couple of you tell me what's one thing you know about this topic. And I'm going to go back so you can see the name of the article again. Oh, come on. Somebody can type in there something they know about this topic. Behaviors impede reading. You are correct. Teaching to figure out their reading level first. That's a big deal. Oh yeah, collab. All right. So now those are a few things. Okay. So let's move on and see what we can do with this topic. First thing, excuse me, I saw this and they need a lot of support and strategies because they do get frustrated easily. And if you read this quote, this is going to show you one reason why they get frustrated so easily. That researchers have found that beginning in the middle school, students with EBD have the slowest growth in reading skills as compared with other high incidence disabilities such as learning disabilities, speech and language impairments. And that by the time they're in high school, they're often reading several grade levels below their peers. Excuse me. And that's where that frustration comes in. That's when the behavior come in. So if we can get the comprehension up, it not only improves their behavior with the gen ed setting, but it also is a big proponent to show if they are going to be successful in life, that job skills, obtaining a job. I have another quote on that one somewhere. Behaviors surface to mask deficits. You are so right. So let's look at this one. The whole thing here, we are increasing engagement and comprehension. This is specifically for narrative text. I didn't mention that earlier, I apologize. I'm sure it can be adapted for informational text, but this one itself is really specifically for narrative. So we're going to provide those instructional choices, maybe peer reading to the students, and it could also be back like I showed you with Tween Tribune. They could read it on a lower level, or they could watch the video if it's an article such as that. But those instructional choices. And this is all to promote additional opportunities for engagement, because that's a biggie. We want them engaged. And of course, it'll support their oral reading fluency. You need to teach students to use story mapping, graphic organizers, and this is to help promote reading comprehension. Remember though, when we use graphic organizers, we can put all this information into this nice graphic organizer and it can look really good. But then it can be overwhelming if we're asking the students to pull from it, say, to write out a summary. So we have to teach this. This is this skill, it has to be taught explicitly. You can't just assume that they are able to do it. There are 3 steps to promote engagement for this specific strategy: preparation, implementation, and building independence. That independence is what we're always looking for. It's a slow process to get there. We have to model, but we will get there. Preparation. So when you're implementing choice, you give them a menu of choices that they can have. You need to decide which ones align with the intended student outcomes. You are going to create this menu of choices. You're going to review it with the students. You're going to explain the menu options to the students. Now, these choice menus may change for different text, and you're going to also get feedback from the students. You need to make sure that the options are motivating. You may want to provide the students with a preference assessment so that they could go through and rank the order of the choices. You may have choices as simple as having extra time at the end of class to talk. That's a big deal, especially with the older students. You may have something as simple as computer or tablet time, snacks. It doesn't have to get expensive. Of course, you could buy them a gift card to different local businesses. I'm sure they'd like that too. It's a choice. Now, when you're designing the lessons, you need to, of course, the appropriateness of instructional procedure for the material, research base for the instructional procedure, all of this. The reinforcement for student go. So that's something to think of when you're designing the lessons. This table, it's, as it says, evidence-based instructional procedures appropriate for reading text passages. So if the activity is silent reading, A choice description, students can read quietly to themselves, but one of the considerations, students are able to practice the reading skills they have learned during skills instruction. If the student chooses this option too often, the teacher may consider whether the contingencies are appropriate. So you may have to rethink it if we're always choosing silent reading. So here are a few activity ideas: silent reading, repeated reading. This one is kind of neat. Collaborative group practice, and structured peer tutoring. So these are your activities. This is the choice description, and it's even given examples of points that could be available for the students to work towards for their menu of choices with this considerations. Evidence-based instructional procedures this is evidence-based instructional procedures that's appropriate for reading text passages. Like I said, there are suggested point values. Those are just a consideration. You can change that. It's just something to look at. Although a procedure may be worth more depending on how the teacher wants to guide the students, and of course the choices can be varied by the lesson. After you're more familiar with your students and their preferences, you'll be able to determine which strategies provide a greater benefit and and assign more points to those activities. But there's the repeated reading. Students practice reading the passage aloud to the teacher. So we're getting that needed practice in. The student practice allows students to receive direct feedback from the teacher and can lessen anxiety and frustration. So they may not feel as embarrassed to read it to you as to their peers. So this is an option: repeated reading. Read it to your teacher. Collaborative group practice. Students take turns reading in small groups and receive feedback from their group. So if those better readers may want the feedback, they may not. The high school kids can be fun. And then, of course, the structured peer tutoring. Students take turns reading, partners help each other out and correct errors. So these are some different activities when we're looking at this approach. This is the list of the description and a list of considerations. Again, this is just an example. You can make it ever how you want. This is just to give you something to go by. When we get to step 2, implementation, keep in mind here, silent reading. Many of our students with EBD struggle in social situations. They develop anxiety when faced with academic tasks, and allows struggling readers to engage in prolonged periods with text. So if they're silent reading, you can give them extra time to engage with the text. It may not be as frustrating, at least so that their peers won't realize that they are struggling with it. The teacher distributes the menu of choices for the day on index cards. So when you go to implement this, you can give the students, you don't have to, it can be posted on the board, but one suggestion is on an index card, give everybody choices so that they'll know what they're working for. Put it on the PowerPoint, put it on your smartboard, ever what you have. Silent reading fluency is a strong predictor of reading comprehension for struggling adolescent readers, and it's highly correlated with oral reading fluency and comprehension among adolescents with reading disabilities. So teachers need to provide the students with a text at their independent level so that they enjoy the act of reading without frustration. Students with disabilities will likely pick a higher level text that they are unable to read. So there you are the student has the frustration, the behaviors come into play. So if you've selected it ahead of time and it's at their independent level, hopefully there won't be as many frustrations. Still with implementation on step 2, the repeated reading, it improves that oral reading fluency of adolescents. So just let them read to you. Short segments, don't give them big long text, just little short couple sentences. The goal is to increase students' decoding and word identification. We want this to become automatic. We don't want them struggling over words. With our little guys, not so much with our big guys. With our little guys, fluency can affect comprehension. Not always with our big guys as much, but it does. And the teacher reads first to model the passage while the student listens. Then the student reads the passage at least 4 times. So this is just repeated reading. We're working for mastery here. I have a guy knocking on the door. Hang on a second. Hi, I'm in a session right now. That's me. Thank you. Thank you. I don't even have it.
It's all right. It's okay. I'll do it.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay. I apologize. I wasn't expecting that. So anyhow, we're working on mastery. If the teacher reads it and models it, the students are going to hear it correctly done. And then the student can do it repeatedly until he or she has it mastered. With the collaborative group, these are all those suggestions that we'd listed on the table. With the collaborative group, it's going to help build the students' social skills with their oral reading fluency. The teacher was going to assign the group members. They're going to give them roles. They're going to try, these roles are going to try to keep everybody on task. The roles facilitator, time watcher, peacekeeper. We're going to give everybody a different role. Hopefully it's going to help with engagement as well as keeping everyone on task. And of course the group needs to include varying abilities. We don't want a low group or a high group. That's not what we want. We want these varying abilities. The teacher needs to explain to the students that each group member is responsible for their own learning as well as the learning of their peers. So we have to be responsible. They're trying to help themselves as well as each other. The last part of this implementation is the structure, peer tutoring, sorry. It increases those opportunities to respond and provides more text exposure. It provides students with EBD a chance to improve their relationships with others. We don't want huge groups though. And a teacher divides the class into 2 groups based on ability level. So we're just multi-abilities. We're going to be in these 2 groups. We don't want huge groups. We're also going to be working on those peer relationships, so that's a big deal. The teacher's going to explain to the students the importance of teamwork in their groups and pairs. The teacher's going to give examples on how teamwork has helped in other realistic situations and how both students, learn to read better when they work together. Teachers are going to model appropriate tutoree behavior. They can do this maybe with a paraprofessional in the classroom. They can do this with another student, but they're going to model this. And students are going to take turns reading and providing feedback to each other with text that the teacher has selected. And the selected text is going to be at the student who's the lowest achieving level. So we want everybody to be able to access it. So the kid in the group that has the lowest level, that's how the text is selected, which I know doesn't hit that independent level that we were talking about earlier in the other strategy, but that's what we're doing for this one. This is still, structured peer tutoring. Higher achieving students will read first. The other students attend and act as a tutor. So this also gives that reread type thing. They'll hear it read and then they can read it. We're going to switch rows. Our lower achieving students read the same text. Students who will switch partners every couple of days. We don't want everybody always working with the same person. We're going to kind of rotate them in and out. Teachers should prepare students with a pre-taught structure for reading passages and providing feedback. So for example, students take turns offering corrective feedback summarizing paragraphs, and making predictions about what will happen next in the story. The teacher is going to obviously monitor the students' performance, reward the students with points for demonstrating cooperative behavior, for adhering to the tutoring instructions, just whatever you have decided students can get points for. Teachers are, of course, going to select narrative texts that are relevant to the student's life and engagement. If the student feels a connection to the text, they should be more engaged. And here is peer tutoring prompts to promote engagement. If you look at this, this is just a sample of prompts for students to use during peer tutoring. The prompt, I like how you read that paragraph. These are all taught. These would be modeled. Students aren't going to automatically do this or know this. And I know high schoolers you're thinking they're going to bucket, and they might. But if you've done it multiple times, they're going to catch on and they're going to follow along. And the purpose of these different prompts are listed on the side. So I like how you read that paragraph carefully and clearly. The purpose or rationale, well, we're building confidence and we're maintaining engagement. So these are just different prompts that they could use during that peer tutoring section. Step 3, building independence. Here we're going to scaffold student choice. The teacher may prompt students into making choices by asking questions to the group about how one makes a decision, encourage students to encourage students to take risks. This is to help them overcome anxiety related to unfamiliar activities. And finally, teachers prompt students to independently choose their task for the day. So we're going to scaffold the student choice making by maybe using a think aloud procedure, by modeling the thought process for how to select an appropriate activity. So for example, you might go, you might verbally state, yesterday I read to myself, so I might try something new today. So when they're making these choices, yesterday I read to myself, so let's look at something new. But you are, again, going to need to model this behavior. The students need to see it being done. And maybe they'll try something different. Maybe I could work with a group, or maybe I could just work with one person. Model these behaviors. State them out loud. Let the students hear you. I think today I'll start with reading with a partner, and just out loud. And then the teacher may need to change the incentives to motivate those unmotivated students. So you can't continuously keep the same choices. We need to change. When you're doing this, we're also going to look at story mapping for these secondary students. We're going to look at graphic organizers. These are tools that are going to enhance the students' text comprehension. They're going to activate that background knowledge. They're going to draw attention to key standard-based story elements during reading. It serves as a guide to promote teacher questioning, and it facilitates text summarization. So these graphic organizers do a lot, and it helps them bring it all together with a summary. Background knowledge, reviewing notes, taking on the graphic organizer from the previous day's lesson is something you could do to help with background knowledge. Just pull that graphic organizer out from yesterday and talk about it. So to help with story elements, you may want to specifically say we're going to work on plot or story sequence or key detail or character trait or whatever, but that can be brought into your graphic organizer to meet those required standards that you have to work on as well. When you're doing your story map, it needs to have space, like your lines or boxes, so students can write on, not open area. You need to provide a framework for monitoring their understanding, framework for locating pertinent information during reading. Teachers can probe student to understanding of story elements after students are taught to complete the maps. So this is after they're taught. The story map content, again, you may include characters. That may be a section of your story map, or theme, or conflict resolution, or sequence of events, or summarization, author's perspective. Whatever you're working on, it can be included in that story map. One study from a high school self-contained classroom shows that improved comprehension of students reading below grade level, and it increased their attention. So story maps are really great. Make sure there's a place for them to write. Don't just leave it open. And bring in the specific content that you're working on for your standards, for your grade level standards, if needed. To prepare a story map, you're going to obviously identify your learning objectives. You're going to choose a text to work on those specific narrative skills. You're going to preview the upcoming text. Teachers are going to locate vocabulary words or proper nouns that may be tricky for the students, so you're going to think of those ahead of time. And teachers select or create a story map according to specific questions and narrative elements the student must learn. So you may have to create, you might be able to find one, but you may have to create your own story map to hit those specific questions or narrative elements. If you're working on a standard that includes identifying story details, understanding plot, identifying narrative theme, you're of course going to select a story with those narrative elements and include them on the story map. And here's an example of a story map. You can see down the side, we have the characters, setting, dilemma, conclusion, moral or lesson. So, and we've given them space. We've given them lines to write on. We've kept it all together. Students know exactly what they're looking for. Characters. Name the characters in the story. We've even asked a question, a WH question. A setting. What's important? Okay, so we have all of this laid out. Students can follow it. It'll help them keep up with the story. It'll give them those important details. And there's no open spaces. They know what's needed. They know what's expected. They see it, there it is. We know what we have to do, then we can move on. Here's another example of a story map. This one, it says story map example using text details to identify character trait, conflict, and resolution. So we have our character, it's listed at the top, and then question or example from the text depicting character traits. And we have another one, the conflict of the chapter involving the main characters. So this, if you're looking at specific text details, you could lay it out as that. These are just a couple of examples. Implementation for story map. So you're going to explicitly review comprehension skills the map contains. You're going to go over this. We don't want it to be a surprise. We want them to understand what is expected. You're going to provide examples. Teacher and student review the story map by quarterly reading each box. So when they have their map, you have your map. We're going to quarterly read this together so students know what is expected. The teacher's going to model completing the map. You may have it on large chart paper in front of your room. You may have it up on your smart board. You may be writing it on a whiteboard. I don't know, what works. But you're going to model completing this map and explain as you do it. And you're going to use this type of guided practice for several lessons. This is something the students have to be explicitly taught. They are not just going to get it immediately. Lead them through it. Once they're ready, then we're going to start role releasing of that responsibility. This page, this slide has different websites. So these are all websites where you can get a story map and graphic organizers. They're all listed here. Take a picture of it with your phone or whatever. These are just websites, and here's a list of content examples. So you're going to want that as well. Building independence for the story map. So the ultimate goal is for students to independently use their tools And this is all for them to be able to monitor and enhance their own comprehension of this narrative text. So the teachers will slowly fade the support of using the story map. The fading is strategically check in with the students less frequently during a lesson. So if you were walking around and checking in with a student every couple of minutes, well, then you're going to, if it's every 2 minutes, then you're going to slowly back it up to every 4 minutes or whatever you feel is needed for that student. So you are going to slowly fade how much you are checking in with the student. The teachers can provide partially completed story maps. So say we have a student with more severe disabilities. He or she may not be completely comfortable with the story map, so the teacher is going to have it and it's going to be partially completed. So these are just different things. The students that can independently complete a story map correctly 2 times, they are ready to move on to work with that independent practice. They need to be able to correctly complete it at least twice before you move on to independent practice. And actually that finished that article. So let's connect this to our own teaching. What's something interesting that you learned today, and can you relate this to something that you've done in your own classroom? Just 2 quick minutes. Okay, yeah, those websites that allow you to adjust the reading levels, those are great. It's really good that you can give the student the same content, but on a different level. And the websites are on the PowerPoint, so when you get it, you'll have it, okay? And I just got the, hey, you've got 15 minutes notice, so we've got to move on. Here is the source for that article. Yeah, so you didn't think the high school students would like the story map? It's worth a shot. Give it a try. Here's the source for that article: Supporting Students with Emotional and Behavior Disorders is Comprehension of Reading Fluency. The issue, the author, and of course, as I said before, it came from Teaching Exceptional Children. Our next one, and we're going to go through really quick because I am almost out of time, it's called Inclusive Comprehension Strategy Instruction. And we aren't going to stop to do this. We're going to move right on. This is the other quote that I had mentioned earlier. Developing even minimal reading comprehension skills leads to greater inclusion of adolescents with intellectual disabilities in the general education classroom and increases employment opportunities after high school. And that is really big for our students. So again, we're going to move right on. We are looking at reciprocal teaching. Reciprocal teaching, it's an instructional technique that promotes group problem solving through these 4 strategies: questioning, clarifying, summarizing, predicting. These are the 4 strategies that we're going to be talking about. How do students learn these 4 strategies? Well, it's going to be a gradual release of responsibility, and we're going to use explicit teacher modeling, guided practice, and independent practice. For explicit strategy instruction, the teacher explains how reading comprehension strategies help people become better readers. The teachers are going to read short text. Again, we're not reading long bits of text. We're going to read short text aloud. Then we're going to model those strategies of questioning, clarifying, summarizing, and predicting. Teachers are going to model this. The students need to see it in order to be able to do it. Teacher models and explains each strategy one at a time. We're going to do this in depth, 1 to 2 paragraphs of text. The text is read aloud. Strategies learned on the previous day are repeated during each lesson. So if yesterday we did predicting and today we're doing questioning, well, before we start, we're going to make sure that predicting is reviewed, but it's also included in today's text. Guided practice. We're going to do this through guided practice. Students practice using one strategy on a section of 1 to 2 paragraphs in length. The teacher provides prompts. They're going to give explanations. We're going to give encouragement, feedback, whatever's needed. The students are going to work in small groups, and the teacher leads the discussion about the text. The teacher is going to prompt the students to use each of the strategies, and students use student interpretations of the text to guide this discussion. During this time, we are modeling all 4 of those strategies: questioning, clarifying, summarizing, and predicting. That's what we do first. Independent practice. Students take turns leading the group discussions to keep everyone actively involved, where everybody's going to have a turn. Student dialogue, the student dialogue leader, so that's a title that one of the students is going to get, dialogue leader, prompts the groups to work through each of the 4 strategies in reciprocal teaching. Students are assigned roles within the group. Predictor, questioner, summarizer. I'm not sure if questioner or summarizer are actual words, but for this they are. Or clarifier. Each student leads a group during the discussion on their assigned strategy during their row. So if they are the summarizer, they're going to lead the group on the summary portion. And you may want to assign a motivator just to keep everybody's spirits up. Students work in pairs to practice the implement of the strategy. So now we have our questioner and our answerer. They can rotate rows. The teacher monitors the group work and student understanding, and then the students start to monitor their own comprehension. The explicit step and the guided instruction step that we just talked about, these can be ongoing as the students may master each reading strategy at a different rate. So everything, it's all going to be dependent on your student. Yeah, lots of students that do have issues reading, that's where that frustration come in. They may not want to read in front of their peers. Hopefully, if we can do that repeated reading, as we talked about in the other strategy with the teacher, this may increase their reading ability too. If the exposure is going to increase their reading ability. But when we're looking at this strategy, some considerations you have to take: accessibility. Is it interesting? Is it engaging? That Tween Tribune allows accessibility on so many levels, so many lexile levels depending on where the student is, as well as the video clip for those students who can't read. So keep these things in mind. And students with disabilities may require more time. We all know this. And this one also, positive gains after 16 to 18 instructional settings. It doesn't happen overnight. This takes time. UDL must always be considered. Provide a read aloud. Now, if you are going to provide a read aloud, reading the text aloud or using an audio assisted recording should be provided prior to group reading or in place of peer and independent reading in a group. Graphic organizers. A graphic organizer could be on a big chart paper in front of the classroom so that the teacher could model, and then as the student gains independence, it could become a worksheet for the student to work on more independently. Cue cards, teacher target vocabulary words, and back again, the boom cards, the, I forgot what the other one was, the Kahoot. These are all different things that can help with those vocabulary words. Here is a little cheat sheet when we're doing this reciprocal teaching, because we're looking at prediction, questioning, summary, clarifications. This is a little cheat sheet It's a little graphic organizer. Again, it can be on chart paper. Teacher can be modeling it. It can be brought down to more of a worksheet type thing. And it goes through, it gives you questions to look at. Prediction, what do I think is what's going to happen? Questioning, of course, those WH questions are huge. But that's what this is. Here are some teacher approaches and some UDL elements that can be worked in. Pre-teaching of vocabulary. Sentence starters. Sentence starters are big. Cue cards for visual reminders. For each of those 4 strategies, prediction, it's done before reading. Yes, of course. Students are going to create a hypothesis. They're going to confirm or disprove the hypothesis based on the text. It has to be based on the text. To teach predicting, model it. Always model. You're going to model reading the title, model skimming through the headings and the pictures. You may verbally say, well, what do I think that this will be about? Ask the students, what do you think this will be about? Questioning. Students can create questions for their peers, those WH questions. When students determine 3 to 4 questions, they can then work in pairs and take turns asking their peers. This could be put on an index card or a bookmark. Again, it's just a little, oh, I went too quick, sorry. It's just a little cheat sheet. Questioning, here's some examples. Predicting, here's some examples. Sentence starters, I think, I predict, I imagine. Clarifying, what words are new? Look for context clues. Reread or read some more. Summarizing, wrap. Reread, ask what the main idea and details, and put in 1 or 2 sentences to summarize it. Use sentence starters. What's the most important idea? Clarifying. Reading should make sense. If it doesn't make sense, then we need to clarify. Something's not right. It's more than decoding words. It needs to make sense. It's not just decoding. We're looking at comprehension. Students may need to verbalize how they use the clarifying strategy. So they may need to actually say, I didn't get this word, so I looked it up in the dictionary, or I asked my teacher, or I asked my peers, or I went back and used context clues. So they may need to verbalize this. When working in pairs, one student may need to be assigned that motivator role, so we keep everything going. Summarizing. Teacher reads paragraph and models the verbal and written summary. Modeling, the whole thing that we've talked about is modeling. The teacher needs to model everything. We are leading them initially. We are going to work towards independence, but initially we are leading. Teacher reads the next paragraph and the students work with the teacher to summarize. So we've modeled one, now we're working together. Students need to complete oral summaries before completing written. That's big. We have to do it orally before we're writing it down, and that wrap strategy that we talked about as for the cheat card. Okay, sorry I went so fast, I was running out of time. That completes that one, that strategy. It is found here, Teaching Exceptional Children. The name of the article, Inclusive Comprehension Strategy Instruction, Reciprocal Teaching, and Adolescents with Intellectual Disabilities, the author and the issue. So if you want to read it, take a quick picture of that and you can locate that. Teaching Exceptional Children offers so much. We are out of time, but here's one quick additional source. You may want to write this website down. It has nothing to do with what we were talking about, but I think you'll like it. And I'll hush now. It's 11:14. We have to be done in 1 minute. Anybody have any questions? Email me. And I'll happily respond. Thanks, guys, for attending. Sorry I rushed through that last one.
Thank you so much, Ms. Price. We appreciate you being here today and spending this time with us. We did have some requests over in the chat for a copy of the presentation. If you're
Yes.
willing, we can share that. If you'll share that with Katie Helton in our office, who you've been in contact with, we can share that out with all of our participants here.
I'm very willing. If it'll help somebody, I'm all for it.
Great. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time. Thank you for being here. You did an exceptional job.
Thank you.
We are wrapping up, and our next session starts in 15 minutes. So those who are participating, you'll just go to your next link in your program, select which session you'd like to attend, and we'll see you